In the late 19th century, Hopkinsville, Kentucky, was just another quiet farming community in America's heartland. But within its modest boundaries, a boy named Edgar Cayce was about to embark on a journey that would blur the line between the natural and the supernatural. Born in 1877, Cayce was a shy, deeply religious child, known for reading the Bible from cover to cover each year. From an early age, he claimed to see visions, beings of light, and even his deceased grandfather, yet he kept these experiences private, fearing ridicule. His first public brush with the extraordinary came in 1900, when a mysterious illness robbed him of his voice for months. No doctor could offer a cure. Then, during a session with a local hypnotist, Cayce entered a strange trance state. Speaking clearly for the first time in months, he described, while asleep, the nature of his own ailment and prescribed a treatment. Following those instructions, his voice returned. Word spread quickly. The young man could heal in his sleep. Soon, neighbors began visiting him with ailments no physician could solve. Under hypnosis, Cayce would describe the person's condition with uncanny accuracy, often using complex medical terminology he had never learned. Then he would prescribe remedies, sometimes herbal, sometimes mechanical, that frequently worked. The local press called him the sleeping prophet. But Cayce's readings weren't limited to health. He began speaking of past lives, ancient civilizations like Atlantis, and prophecies that hinted at future world events. Strangely, many of these visions connected human history to the stars, implying that advanced beings from other worlds had shaped our destiny. Decades later, believers would point to his statements as evidence of alien influence in humanity's past. By 1910, newspapers across America were reporting on his miracles and mysteries. For some, he was a healer sent by God. For others, a dangerous fraud. But for Cayce, it was a burden he never sought, one that would define the rest of his life. By the 1920s, Edgar Cayce's reputation had spread far beyond Kentucky. Requests for readings poured in from doctors, businessmen, farmers, and even political figures. While most sought cures for illnesses, some wanted answers to deeper mysteries: humanity's origin, the fate of lost civilizations, and the nature of the soul. In these sessions, Cayce would lie down, close his eyes, and drift into a trance. His voice, calm and steady, would begin to describe scenes not of the present, but of distant history. One of his most shocking themes was Atlantis. Cayce claimed this ancient continent was once home to a technologically advanced civilization, thriving over 10,000 years ago. According to his readings, the Atlanteans harnessed crystal energy, controlled climate, and mastered flight. He spoke of massive power stations that drew energy from the Earth's core, ideas that sounded like pure fantasy at the time, yet eerily resembled modern theories about advanced prehistoric cultures. But Cayce's accounts went further. He hinted that the Atlanteans were not entirely human in origin. He spoke of visitors from the skies, beings who came from other worlds, merging their knowledge with early humanity. They were the bringers of mathematics, astronomy, and spiritual lore. In his words, these entities were both guides and cautionary figures, warning of the dangers of misusing advanced technology. His prophecies stated that fragments of Atlantis would one day rise again, bringing ancient knowledge back to humanity. He even predicted that parts of this lost land would be discovered near the Bahamas in the late 20th century, a claim that later fueled theories about the Bimini Road found in 1968. Not everyone accepted these revelations. Critics called them delusions, the product of an overactive imagination or subconscious knowledge of myths. But believers pointed to uncanny details in his readings that matched archaeological discoveries decades later. For Cayce, these visions were not mere stories. They were warnings from the past, urging humanity to choose wisdom over greed. Whether or not one believed in alien visitors, the sleeping prophet's words left an undeniable mark on the quest to understand our origins. While the tales of Atlantis and cosmic visitors stirred curiosity, it was Edgar Cayce's astonishing medical readings that earned him the loyalty and sometimes the desperation of thousands. In an era when medicine was still struggling to combat diseases like tuberculosis, polio, and epilepsy, Cayce's unconventional approach seemed nothing short of miraculous. The process was always the same. Cayce would lie on a couch, close his eyes, and slip into a deep trance-like state. An assistant, often his wife Gertrude, would read aloud the name and location of a patient, sometimes hundreds of miles away. Without any physical examination, Cayce would describe, in intricate medical detail, the patient's condition. His words often baffled physicians, using terminology and treatment methods he had never studied. One famous case involved a 5-year-old boy suffering from blindness due to advanced eye inflammation. Conventional doctors had given up hope. In trance, Cayce recommended a mixture of castor oil packs, diet adjustments, and specific nerve stimulation. Weeks later, the boy's sight returned, an event his family called a divine miracle. Another dramatic account involved a man bedridden with severe rheumatoid arthritis. Cayce's prescription combined massage with an unusual diet and electrotherapy. Within months, the patient regained mobility. Similar stories repeated across thousands of documented readings, many preserved in the archives of the Association for Research and Enlightenment, ARE. Skeptics argued that such recoveries could be explained by placebo effects or spontaneous remission. Yet the sheer number of successful cases, many corroborated by physicians of the time, left room for doubt and fascination. Some doctors began discreetly consulting Cayce, curious to see if his methods could complement their own. For Cayce, healing was never just about the body. He believed illness often stemmed from spiritual or emotional imbalance. His remedies frequently included prayer, meditation, and lifestyle changes aimed at restoring harmony between mind, body, and soul. In his worldview, health was inseparable from a person's moral and spiritual state. As the years passed, his medical successes continued to grow. But so did the pressure and the burden of being the man everyone turned to when hope seemed lost. As Edgar Cayce's fame spread, people began to seek more than healing. They wanted answers about the future, wars, natural disasters, and the fate of humanity itself. Reluctantly, Cayce agreed to give such readings, always reminding his audience that the future was shaped by human choices. Yet some of his visions were chillingly specific. One of his most famous predictions came in the 1930s, when he foresaw the outbreak of World War II. He warned that unless major nations work together for peace, a great war will arise in the lands of the rising sun. Years later, Japan's attack on Pearl Harbor would hurl the United States into global conflict, eerily matching his warning. Cayce also spoke of dramatic earth changes, rising seas, shifting coastlines, and violent weather patterns. He predicted that parts of New York, California, and Japan would eventually disappear beneath the ocean. Alaska, he said, would one day be a tropical region, and the Earth's poles would shift, causing massive climate upheaval. Some believers point to modern concerns about climate change and polar ice melt as signs his prophecies may be unfolding. One of his more enigmatic visions involved the return of Atlantis. He claimed that portions of the temples will be discovered near Bimini in the Bahamas between 1968 and 1969. When divers found the mysterious Bimini Road in 1968, a submerged rock formation some believed to be man-made, Cayce's followers saw it as undeniable proof. Perhaps most controversial were his hints about extraterrestrial influence. He suggested that humanity was not alone and that beings from beyond Earth had played a role in shaping our civilizations. He never described them as conquerors, but as ancient guides whose warnings echoed through history. To Cayce, prophecy was not about fear, it was about responsibility. He urged people to live with compassion, integrity, and spiritual awareness, believing that such values could alter even the most dire predictions. By the early 1940s, these visions had cemented his status as both a revered prophet and a target for fierce criticism. Yet no matter the controversy, people continued to seek his voice, hoping for a glimpse of what tomorrow might bring. Among all the thousands of readings Edgar Cayce delivered in his lifetime, some of the most mysterious dealt with humanity's distant past. In these trance visions, he painted a picture of ancient civilizations touched by knowledge far beyond their time, knowledge he hinted had come from beyond the earth itself. Cayce spoke often of Atlantis, but in these particular readings, he described the Atlanteans as heirs to a cosmic heritage. According to him, those from the outer realms had descended to Earth in a time before recorded history. They did not arrive as conquerors, but as teachers, bringing advanced science, spiritual laws, and a deep understanding of the universe. These visitors, he claimed, helped shape early human societies, seeding knowledge that would later emerge in Egypt, Mesopotamia, and the Mayan world. He described these beings as possessing a luminous presence, their technology seamlessly blending with nature. Their purpose, Cayce suggested, was to guide humanity toward spiritual enlightenment and harmony with the cosmos. Yet, in Atlantis, that guidance was corrupted. The misuse of energy crystals and psychic powers led to devastating wars, eventually sinking the continent beneath the sea. Cayce's accounts often linked these visitors to great monuments still standing today. He claimed that the Great Pyramid of Giza was built not merely as a tomb, but as a repository of Atlantean and cosmic knowledge, a place where the story of humanity's true origins was preserved. He even predicted that a hidden hall of records beneath the Sphinx would one day be found, containing proof of humanity's extraterrestrial connections. These readings were dismissed by many as myth or metaphor, but for believers they offered a startling alternative to conventional history. They tied humanity's journey to a much larger cosmic narrative, one in which we were not alone and never had been. For Cayce, the message was clear. If humanity repeated the mistakes of Atlantis, the consequences could be catastrophic. But if we embraced the wisdom of the stars, a new era of peace and enlightenment could begin. By the early 1940s, Edgar Cayce's health was beginning to fail. Despite warnings from his own trance readings to slow down, the constant demand for his help pushed him beyond his limits. At his peak, he was performing as many as 8 readings a day, an exhausting process that left him physically drained. Friends and family urged him to rest, but Cayce felt a deep responsibility to those who wrote to him from all over the world, pleading for answers and healing. In 1944, with the world still engulfed in the fires of World War II, Cayce gave one of his most haunting predictions. Massive earth changes were on the horizon, and humanity's future would depend on its spiritual choices in the decades to come. He emphasized unity, compassion, and living in harmony with natural laws. To him, the survival of civilization was not a matter of technology, but of morality. By the autumn of that year, his body could no longer endure the strain. His final reading, given for himself, confirmed what he already knew. His time on Earth was ending. On January 3, 1945, Edgar Cayce passed away in Virginia Beach, leaving behind more than 14,000 documented trance readings. These covered topics ranging from medicine and history to prophecy and the unexplained origins of humanity. His death did not end his influence. The Association for Research and Enlightenment, ARE, founded during his lifetime, continues to preserve and study his readings. Scientists, historians, spiritual seekers, and even UFO researchers still explore his words, debating whether they were visions of truth or the creations of a deep subconscious mind tapping into universal knowledge. To believers, Cayce remains the ultimate example of a reluctant prophet, a man who never sought fame or fortune, yet changed countless lives. To skeptics, he is a puzzle that defies easy explanation. Even today, his predictions about climate change, ancient civilizations, and possible extraterrestrial contact inspire documentaries, books, and debates. And perhaps that is Cayce's greatest legacy. He dared to suggest that humanity's story is far older, far stranger, and far more connected to the stars than we have ever imagined. If Edgar Cayce's visions truly hold the keys to our past and future, then we must ask ourselves, are we ready to listen? Are we willing to learn from the warnings of the sleeping prophet? Or are we destined to repeat the mistakes of Atlantis? If you believe humanity's history is far greater and far stranger than we've been told, then join us. Subscribe now, turn on notifications, and explore with us the hidden truths, the forbidden histories, and the cosmic mysteries that shape our world. Your journey into the unknown begins here.